podcast de la Esquena, Festival Edition.
So we are here with the coolest Mancunian ever, which is of course Barry Adamson. Barry, thank you very much for joining us today at the Esquena Rock Festival podcast.
Yeah, thank you for asking me along.
It's our pleasure. So first of all, happy birthday with delay because it was recently your birthday, and now you're here in the Esquena Rock Festival. This interview is taking place just a couple of hours before your amazing show. Mm-hmm. So how are your vibes? How would you highlight of the festival for now?
It's a great feeling just to be here, and the way everything is run, it seems so like, you know, everyone's so friendly, everyone's so welcoming, and just to be outside, because we've just been playing like a lot of small venues, small clubs, and then to come, you know, at a bigger place on a bigger stage, it's really great. It makes for a good feeling.
Mm-hmm. Would you highlight any other band or artist of the?
Well, obviously, Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah,
you know,
you like them.
I really do. Yeah, you know, and I think what they bring and what they do is just, it's like bigger than I can imagine. You know, and. But funny enough, I also like noted L7 being there. It's been a long time since they were causing mayhem. I remember them being on a television show in England and just going completely crazy. And then I had the opportunity to run into them the next day in London and say hello. So looking forward to seeing them, perhaps.
Okay. You are presenting your latest album, which is Cut to Black. And we may find some gospel, classic soul, blues, and jazz all perfectly blended. Yeah. How would you describe for our audience this very new album?
Well, I think you're right. It's a real blend of all of the things that make me feel really good about being involved in music. And also, it's like my own version, I suppose. So I take a little bit of this and a little bit of, you know, like jazz, blues, gospel, even like psychedelia, and mix them all together. And then hopefully it becomes something new, like something fresh. And that's how I kind of based the album. So I think it's interesting for people to hear and see in that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Of course, you're so known because of being the bass player of Magazine. Right. And then you have a split with Nick Cave on the Bad Seeds. And that was a crucial moment, I think, in your career, because after being with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, you decided to start your career as a solo artist. What happened? Or what was the very moment that you decide, okay, now I'm going solo?
Yeah, it's funny because I guess most people go solo and they start to write songs and do the things that I'm doing now. But for me, I got really interested in film. So film soundtrack became something that interests me, and the more and more I thought about it, the more I thought that's something I want to go to. So it wasn't so much a solo career in the beginning, it was just like a career move into making music for films. But then, you know, I got so used to making records and being on the road, I started to introduce some other things so I do movie score, then make some like tracks for an album, now it's all become one thing.
Okay. I found it particularly curious, the story of the Most Side Story. Yeah. It was your debut as a solo album. And it was a music film for a film that never happened.
Yeah.
That's a funny story, right?
Strange, yeah.
What happened?
Well, I just thought to get into movies at that time, it was very expensive ways of making, you know, small cameras, nothing. So they would employ people who were already doing big scores and stuff. So I wanted to put together a piece of work that represented where I'm at and the kind of film music that I do. And I also had the idea that maybe you could listen to it and use your imagination to make a film. And people would say to me, I was listening to it on a train, and then they would like look at something like it was a movie. So I think something was working there. Plus, I wanted to say to like film directors, here's something, this is what I do. If it's any use for you, then you know, come to me and I can do this kind of thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that cinematic landscape is still going on in this Cut to Black new album?
Yeah, I think it just became an identity for me,
Yeah.
and a place to exist as an artist. And I think it'd be kind of foolish to abandon it, because I think it's part of the way I see things. So I try and put that in each song, so it has a visual element, so you can feel things and you can see things, and there's a whole, like you say, a cinematic experience.
That's pretty interesting, right? Like to having visuals just
Yeah.
through music.
Yeah, I think though there was a certain point where it became like film soundtrack used to be so obscure, but then it became like a bit more the mainstream, and people would say, "Oh yeah, you know, I'm using this is my soundtrack," or you know, somewhere in there, I think in the late '90s, early 2000s, it became like a thing like, "Oh, this is my soundtrack," you know, this is what I play when. So I think people were kind of, maybe I was as well, like getting that idea that music can also be something that gives you a sense of who you are and like what you do in the world. So it's not so far removed from it being like a soundtrack to your life. Yeah.
Okay. Please allow me to ask you about magazine
Sure.
and Manchester, as I
Yeah.
found both Manchester and magazine, and I'm sure our fans at the Skena Rock Festival people is also a fan of magazine. Would you tell us a story, funny story or something about your memories? What are your sweetest or your weirdest memories with your time with magazine?
Well, I think the sweetest memory is right at the very beginning, because the punk scene was going on, and bands were forming, and I just was with a friend, and we went into a music shop, and it's in a story from the book actually, and I had a bass. Someone had given me a bass a few days ago with 2 strings, and of course you have 4. So I went to a music shop to get
2 were enough.
Yeah,
for
well,
a
2
punk
would
band.
probably be enough. Yeah. Well, it turned out actually that 1 would have been enough, but I got the other strings, and then there was an advert for magazine. Like,
Okay.
It wasn't called magazine, but it was the singer Howard Devoto was looking for musicians, and I just joked with my friend and said, "I'm going to call," and he's like, "You're going to call? But you don't even
Really?
play." And I said, "Well, yeah, but it's punk. We can do anything." So I made the call, and he said, "Come tomorrow." And I was like, "What?" So I put the 2 strings on the guitar, and I didn't have an amplifier, but I had a wooden bed. So I put the neck on the wooden bed and went boom, 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 boom on 1 string, like boom, 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 boom. And I thought, that's cool. So I went to the audition the next day, and he showed me a song. It's called "The Light Pours Out of Me," and he went da 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 da. And so all I could play was boom, 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 which I played. And it fitted really easily. And I was like, "Oh, that's great. Okay, you're in."
We got it.
I know, and I was like, "What?" So I really hold that almost like the way the universe, can give you something and take you into it, and like it's been like that with my career a lot of times. Something's just come along and kind of taken me with it. The road is opened as I start walking. Yeah.
That seems so Manchester as
Very
well.
Manchester
That
as
low
well,
light
yeah.
from Manchester.
That's
that only
very
happens
Manchester.
there.
Yeah, I just went along there and took my bass, and it was great, It's all that.
Okay, so we were talking about the soundtracks, and we have here the soundtrack of your life in the form of a book, which now is published under the label of Liburbac in Spanish. The original title is "Up Above the City, Down Beneath the Stars," and we have the Spanish version, which is "Por encima de la ciudad, por debajo de las estrellas." I would like to ask you, how was the experience of sitting in front of your life and writing them, because you have a lot of experiences with your lights and a bit dark times, and it has to be tough to.
Yeah, but I took it on myself to say, this is who I am, this is my life, this is what has happened. But I also knew that I had, with my experience and knowledge of art, that I could create a story which was true, but perhaps frame it in a certain way, like a film. So the character if you like, is me, and all the things that are happening to the character happen to me. But I thought, how would that look if it was done, say it was a film by Hitchcock, you know, and he would shoot like this, as I go to do this, and then like this happens, and then you turn the page and think, oh my God, or then you turn the page and go, it's okay now, you know. So I had a little bit of this to go with it as well. I mean, it was still quite, you know, hard work, really hard work, and I really had to look at myself, you know, like, but I knew it would be a good thing in the end, you know, and I thought as well, it was also something for the people who you know, are interested in my work to sort of see where the work comes from, you know.
And how does it feel to have your memoirs in Spanish and with this beautiful edition?
No, I was surprised and really, you know, I thought this is fantastic, and I hope that, you know, the experiences of Spanish people can somewhere relate to this idea of like people who work in art and why they work in art and what happens, but I think, you know, for me that's also like a reflection of perhaps you know, a life in Spain as well, which is you know, to do with artists and art, this kind of thing.
Okay, so to conclude, because I don't want to take you more time, you have to prepare for your show, but I read in a review from your latest album, which called you like the coolest Mancunian and one of the most respected musicians. So we have a lot of novel bands, like with young people and stuff, and I would like to ask you, what would you tell them, to a very young band which is starting, what would you tell them in order to be respected as a musician?
Well, I think you've got to, you know, find out who you are and be respectful to that, and respect yourself.
For your own self.
Yeah, for your own self, and that will attract people who see you then as somebody who says they're going to do what they're going to do and shows up on time. All these kind of like quite basic professional things. It's the same for a musician, but I think you know, to know what you have and to practice what you have and like nurture what you have as an art or a talent and something like that. And I think the people will come. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Barry Adamson, thank you very much. That's all for me.
That's cool.
Again, a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy your show. And welcome to Azkena Rock Festival.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
My pleasure.
Thanks.